Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Want to bring a quick update on these markets. Following yesterday's live stream, almost immediately after I dropped off, many of you guys were watching, Bitcoin finally broke out. It was expected. We were kind of all watching it, and sure enough, within the maybe 15-20 minutes of closing that out, we had that breakout on very strong volume. Good to see. It met the target that I was looking for on the upside. I was initially looking for that $6,500 price range, and we just blew right through that. Many of the other alts that I was pointing out during the stream, some of the trades that I were on, did hit those targets, and so started to lock in those gains. I told my group members that this was not a breakout candle in which I'd be buying. Rather, I was booking gains and taking profits into that strength, as many of those alts had reached their targets on the initial trade setups. And we're seeing some pullback now, not anything majorly concerning, just kind of a normal pause pullback type of action that should be expected after such a strong move. And you can see the breakout that we saw was pretty good. It was on very strong volume. That was this candle here, and you can see just has been pausing since then. If we go to the hourly charts, you can see it's just kind of consolidating, letting these moving averages catch up. It did get a bit extended in the short run because that move was so strong. You can see the RSI on the 1 hour chart, went over 80 and just kind of pulling back, sitting tight here. So the question is, how far back does this retracement go, and does it set up for another leg higher? Going to the daily chart, it's still looking positive, still looking bullish, starting to clear some resistance. That was a good breakout above a few levels that I was watching here. The first level I've been talking about here for the last few days was that 64.40 mark, 64.20, certainly cleared that. And then the near term, or the longer term, resistance levels have also started to be edged into here. So still looking positive from the daily perspective, just needs a little bit of a rest. We've had about a week and a half now of bounce action, good upward momentum. RSI is approaching that 60 mark, and that's a key test. I tend to watch that level because if something's going to remain in a bearish mode, meaning that's the end of the bounce, the end of the rally, that's usually where the RSI starts to peak out, in and around that 60, give or take. So that's where I'm watching right now to see if we can start to push higher. But all in all, still looking positive on that 4 hour chart. The levels to keep an eye on this pullback are the moving averages. Right now, if it just sits tight and puts a little bit of a bull flag here, that would be positive, lets these moving averages catch up. But if it continues to pull in, then the first target I'm watching here, and this is on Coinbase, it's going to be around that 64.60 level, down to around where this breakout started to happen. So the low 6,400 range. Don't want to see it get back below 6,400. That retracement would really undo a lot of this positive momentum. And so that's really the level to be watching from that perspective. Using the Binance exchange, similar price action here. You can see it's pulling back, and again, the levels not much different. Basically, those moving averages, that breakout point is really what I'm watching. So on Binance, that translates to about 65.25 down to around 64.90, in and around that. So that's really the two levels that I'm watching on this pullback. Many of the other alts also pulling in here a little bit. You can see, looking at Ethereum, pausing a little bit, touching that moving average. Not a big pullback yet, just kind of a little bit of a corrective pause, healthy consolidation, a little double toppy on that 1 hour chart. But on the 4 hour chart, this is just kind of following that same pattern that it's been doing here. But this did hit that first resistance level that I was looking at, in and around that 619 level. Was looking like it wanted to break through yesterday, pulling in here a little bit right now. Looking at EOS, another one that pushed through. We were looking at this one during the live stream, and my first target was that 571 level, 572. Had basically hit that, and then when Bitcoin broke out, that really started to push higher. The next target was at 585, came pretty close. I essentially just raised my stops up pretty tight rather than taking profits. The momentum was strong, and I thought, I probably should just sell here, but let me just raise the stops up pretty tight, and if it continues higher, I'll trail it higher. And sure enough, that's really where it paused, and since then, seen a little bit of a retracement, a little bit of a pullback. Look at the volume here, though. It is picking up on this sell side, so just important to make note of that. You're seeing some distribution, a little bit of profit taking showing up, but this has had a pretty long run already, series of higher highs and higher lows, hit some resistance here near term, and so the question is, how far does this retrace? Again, right now, it's coming down to the first level. I'd be looking at around that 550 level as kind of your level that you really want to see this one hold if it's going to continue to march higher and build a higher low. But for now, just out of the trade, taking the profits. Look at how extended it was. The 10 EMA on the daily is down here at 550 and had gone up to 584. So that certainly was due for a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a pullback. Very strong action in the alts all around. We'll see most of the cases on all of these is really just looking for that higher low to be set now on that daily chart and on that 4-hour chart. Bitcoin Cash, again, was extended, seen a little bit of a pause here. I had cleared that first target. The next target I was looking at was around that 650 level. Didn't quite get there. Yesterday went as high as 638. Now pulling back a little bit here. I do want to point something out though. I mean, it is making these higher lows. Broke out from that little wedge pattern that we were pointing out here, this little bull pennants, and had a nice move. Very good volume on that move. But there is a bearish divergence starting to show up here, and you can see that on both the MACD histogram as well as on the RSI, and you can see that this higher push up, the momentum is waning here a little bit, not as strong as that first leg higher. And so just something to note, it could continue higher, but this bearish divergence is starting to build now. It is starting to establish itself, and that just signifies that the upward momentum is starting to lose a little bit of steam. And so just make note of that, especially as prices continue higher going into the fork. It has a catalyst behind it. The question is always, where does it stop and where do the profit taking show up? And most likely it's going to happen before the fork, especially following such a strong move. Many people will just not wait for that forked coin, and they would rather just take the profits. I mean, it's up 50% in just a few days, and so that's a very strong move for such a large cap name. Would not be surprising to see some profit taking start showing up even before the fork. Very common to see, so just something to note. We're seeing a little bit of divergence, some selling pressure showing up, but in the case of the bulls, it's still holding the moving average, still marching higher, so the trend is still in place. I'm just starting to see a little bit of red flags showing up here on this chart. So back to the Bitcoin chart here, just wanted to recap and kind of point out a few charts. And if you go down the list, very similar action across many of the names that have had those strong rallies here over the last few days. Names like IOTA, Ripple, even Stellar Lumens pulling in a little bit. Nothing major, just seen some profit taking, seen some pullback to be expected as we have had a pretty strong few days here. And so normal action to see that little bit of pause break. Right now what I'm watching is BTC here. It's still sitting tight, looking pretty good. So the thing to watch is, can it start to break out of this little bit of a pause downtrend that it's in? If it starts to move higher, getting above that 535 level or so, then that's going to show some more upward momentum. But the 4-hour RSI is a little bit elevated already. So ideally, it'd be better if it just kind of set tight. Maybe not quite as long as it did here a couple of days ago, but if it's set tight for the rest of today or so and just let things cool off a little bit, that would support for a much stronger move higher if it wants to continue. Still looking positive, but in many cases I think this is just going to set up some good secondary entries on a handful of those alts that were strong, as well as a little bit of more rotation. We tend to see that for a few days. It's a handful of names that are running strong, so now I'm looking for some rotation. There may be some other names setting up that will begin to look positive and get going. Things like Omise Go are looking good. I'm keeping an eye on Quantum. Basic Attention Token still edging up. And so there's still some names looking relatively strong, looking positive. So for now, just going to take it one day at a time. Keep it a little bit slower today. See how this consolidation / pause plays out and go from there. But all in all, still positive in the intermediate term. The trend is in place. The uptrend is in place. Now we just want to see a higher low being set on that daily chart and on that 4-hour chart. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. Keep you guys posted. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care, everyone.